Hi everyone, I'm Abhishek, co-founder at TrueFoundry. Really excited to be here today. All of us have heard about MCP, agents, all of that, and we also have been working really hard over the past few months, trying to democratize AI and making it easy for folks to build agents. Just to give context,
Abhishek,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. I think you need to get a little bit closer to the mic.
okay. Uh, is it better?
Mm, not
No.
quite. Maybe just a little bit louder. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so basically just to give context for folks who are hearing about TrueFoundry for the first time, TrueFoundry is an AI platform that helps people build and deploy machine learning applications, AI applications, agentic applications on top of their own cloud or on-premise infrastructure. We have been working hard to integrate MCP models and building the AI gateway that kind of makes it really easy to work with different models and servers to build agents. So let's dive in. I'm just going to shed light on, I think almost everyone here would have worked with LLMs in some way or the other. Uh, we have heard of our customers like starting to build agents, even deploying them in production in some cases, and definitely almost all of them are working with LLMs. So as of now, LLMs have become really smart at generating code, understanding language, generating answers, and things like that. But the gap remains that LLMs are.
Abhishek, just 1 second. Like the folks are telling that you are breaking up a little bit. So just ensure you are in a great spot and just maybe also slow down a little bit in terms of speed. Yeah.
Give me 1 second, I'll just shift my location. Is it better by any chance now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so basically LLMs, what I was saying is LLMs have become really good at reasoning and code generation, understanding. And the thing that is missing now is they don't understand the data inside your company or the APIs that you have or all of the context that is already present in an organization. They're not able to make use of that. But if we could tie up LLMs with that data, with those APIs, we can bring about a lot of applications and agents that can be really smart and solve a lot of the problems that we encounter today. So that's where kind of the concept of attaching LLMs to data or APIs comes into the picture. So this is something that people figured out a year ago, that if I was to give a tool to an LLM, like for example, let's say LLM has an access to Slack, and if it can call send message to Slack as an API call, so then you can make LLM start doing things instead of just earlier people used to build RAG applications. Initially, it started with prompt management, then people went on to RAG, and then people realized that basically we can make LLMs do actions too, and that's where the concept of agents came in. The problem was every agent that you build, for example, let's say I have to build an agent that talks to a GitHub API, a Slack API, and Google Calendar. If I have to tie up all these three APIs, I have to write the layer in the middle that kind of plumps these three APIs, and I have to keep doing this for every single agent that I build. It's not a question that it was not possible earlier. It would still be possible without MCP or any of these protocols. It's just that it would take you a lot of time to build every single agent that you're building inside the company. And it is also very fragile in the sense like if Slack changes its API structure or anything like that, you have to now change your application code to conform to the new APIs. And this is why basically the concept of MCP comes into the picture, which was launched by Anthropic in 2024, November. And when it was launched, it was not like it took on a lot of traction instantly because many of the folks were still dealing with prompt management and things like that. But recently, in the last 3 to 6 months, is when MCP has really, the number of stars of GitHub has really shot up, and the penetration of MCP throughout the industry has become really high. And the reasoning behind that is uh, every single software in the world is now kind of publishing their MCP servers. And what this means is that Slack already has its MCP server, GitHub already has its MCP server, and because of having that, you are able to now access the APIs and you don't have to hard code those APIs in your application anymore. So each of them kind of advertises. So Slack will advertise that I have get channels, send message as APIs, and the MCP client can automatically discover all these APIs and actually do all that orchestration of combining LLM along with the APIs. I know it sounds a bit in the air at this point, but it will, as I show the demo and as I go into these details, like things will start becoming clear of how this entire thing actually works. So this is another thing where kind of Anthropic calls it like a USB-C for AI applications, MCP protocol. And the analogy is more like your Slack, Gmail, Google Calendar, even your own databases tomorrow will become MCP servers. You can put MCP servers on top of your databases, on top of your APIs and things like that. So all of this kind of becomes uh, like an add-on to your LLM agent. So you can plug in all these APIs, and the more and more APIs you plug in, the more and more information you give to that model. You can think of it like that. So let's say a model only has access to Slack today, and so it only knows what is available in the internet and what it was trained on, and it only knows how to send messages to Slack. Tomorrow I introduce one more MCP server for searching the internet. So now LLM has an ability that it can search the internet. Then day after that, I introduced one MCP server for Google Calendar. So it now has the ability to schedule events and things like that. So that's the beauty, like you don't have to change your application code. You can keep inserting more and more of these functionalities and your agents will start becoming smarter and smarter. So that's the kind of the concept, like more and more MCP servers you insert, the more capabilities you give to the models and the more automations you can build. So that's like what the model context protocol is.
So today,
Yeah.
like there is a poll. I think if everyone can fill the poll, that will be great.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, like Slack has its MCP servers and it has these 4 APIs. There are more. I've just listed down 4 just for the sake of this slide. So there is send message, get users, search messages, list channels. And in GitHub, you'll have list pull requests, get repos, create pull requests, list issues. And almost you can think of everything in the world can have an MCP server. Like no matter what software you are interacting with, many of them don't have official MCP servers yet, but we expect that within the course of 6 months to a year, almost every software that you interact with will start having MCP servers. And what this enables is you can just give a prompt to a model. So this is more like what does it mean if I have applications, MCP servers? So then you can just give a prompt like get open pull requests on my repository test repo and send me a Slack message with a list of the pull requests. You can literally say this in English and the LLM will do it for you. You don't need to write any code. You don't need to tie up any of those other things. There are other automations that you can unlock within the company if you have these MCP servers well arranged and everything. So for example, if you're using Sentry, if you're familiar with Sentry, Sentry is a tool that kind of collects stack traces from all your applications. PagerDuty is a tool to kind of manage on-call and send alerts and things like that. And Slack, all of us know that it's a messaging tool. So you can build applications saying something like get all the issues from Sentry, all the stack traces, and for each of those things, create an incident in PagerDuty and send a Slack message to the team involved. So you can literally say something like that in English, and if you have the MCP servers of these 3 tools lines inside the company, you will start having this automation running for you. And in that case, the LLM is going to discover that Sentry has a API called get recent errors. It's going to call that. Then it's going to call create incident, notify on call, and then it's going to call send message to channel. So you can tie this up together. Another thing that you can build, and these are just some sample examples I'm giving, the possibilities are really endless at this point. So you can do things like if you have Stripe unpaid invoices in Stripe, you can actually build an automation saying that for all unpaid invoices in Stripe, send an email and notify the customer to pay the bill. and then record the data that I've sent the follow-up in Notion. So you can literally say something like that and the agent will start doing it for you. So this is more on the kind of applications that you can build.
Abhishek, maybe just let's take a pause here and let's
Yeah.
kind of answer some of the questions. So there was a question for everyone, like, can you expand on the conceptual comparison between prompt management of API versus MCP? So we have answered it on chat, but it'll be good for everyone just if you can, elaborate that, Abhishek. Yeah.
The question is what prompt?
The conceptual comparison between prompt management of API versus MCP.
So I'm not sure what the question exactly means. Like, do you mean like providing the API signatures in the prompt versus uh, directly not providing the API signatures in the prompt? Is something along those lines? If the question is like that, you can. So as I mentioned earlier, like whatever MCP introduces, it's not like it was not possible before. You could technically provide the API signatures in the prompt, and you would be able to do those same things. But that whole effort of providing those API signatures in the prompt actually goes away. Like the MCP client does it for you. So it's just one part of it that you have to worry about less in the system. Uh, Essentially, that is what the MCP client does underneath for you. It's just an abstraction that if everybody in the industry conforms to it, you don't have to worry about that part. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, we are trying to answer few. So there's one question around AP, like from Sunil. API auto discovery is a nice concept. Please share more details on how to create an MCP server or an app to perform this. Any blog or resource links? Maybe you can uh, walk over briefly, Abhishek. And if you can slow down the speed, I think some of the folks have mentioned that the speed is too fast. So if you can just slow down, that will be great.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll walk over how to create an MCP server during this thing, and we can send the documentation link in the chat. So we already have it in our documentation, and there are a lot of online blogs also that we can send the link how to do that. So I'll be walking over that in the demo. So I'll just move ahead. So the question is that now that MCP is so powerful and there are so many use cases that we can achieve using building MCP servers and all, how do we actually democratize MCP access within the enterprise? And why is it even a challenge? Like, why are MCP servers not existent in most enterprises today and everybody is able to build agents? So we'll go into some of the challenges in doing that. So the first thing is basically,
Just one other thing, I think there's an important question, like if there is no LLM in picture, can we still use MCP?
technically you can, yes. So you can call the tools of the MCP servers, like the APIs, and you can still write code around it without having LLMs. So you can do that. So in this example that I said earlier, like Slack will have a MCP API, a tool in the MCP server called send message. So you can call this API directly and not involve LLM in the middle. So you can do that. So I'll go ahead. So basically the first thing
Abhishek,
is
I
how
think we've got time there just to launch a second pain point. Sorry, Abhishek, I think we've got time just to launch a second poll there. So I'm just going to launch that out now.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess folks have filled it up, so I'll just move ahead. So the first problem is how do you host these MCP servers? A lot of the MCP servers that are available, a very few softwares have official MCP servers. Many of them are available in open source, but the code behind them, like especially for enterprises where security governance is paramount, like you really need to vet what code is going inside the MCP servers. So that is one of the things. And how do you host it out? How do you deploy it? How do you create an endpoint? So that remains one of the challenges. The second thing is you need to create a central registry of MCP servers. So you need a place where folks can register MCP servers, people can discover them and how to use them. So that whole infrastructure still is missing, and it's not really easy to do it today, adding all these MCP servers in one place. Then comes access control. So not every MCP server should be accessible by everyone. Like let's say I have a very sensitive database inside my company, and one of the production applications can access it, but not developers should not be able to access that sensitive data. So if I build an MCP server on top of that database, no developer should be able to access that MCP server. So you need access control on who can access what MCP server within the company. Then comes authentication and authorization. This is more to do with, let's say I have Slack MCP server inside my company. Then even within Slack, not every employee has access to everything inside Slack. Or if you take example of GitHub, not every employee will have access to all the repositories. So when an employee is using the GitHub MCP server, we need to make sure that that employee can only access the things inside GitHub, what they have actually access to in GitHub. So that is one more thing that you really need to be careful of while hosting these MCP servers, that it's not like one employee gets access to everything that is accessible by the organization. The mapping should still retain even when you're accessing the APIs through the MCP servers. Agent registry is one more thing you'll need. So the moment you democratize MCP access, it will be really easy for folks to start building agents. And agents will be just reduced to, like in many cases, it will just be a prompt and a bunch of tools from MCP servers. So then when I build an agent, I should have a place that I can register the agent so that somebody else can use that agent. So this also becomes important, where you can actually register the agents, store them, and actually trigger them for other use cases. Then comes guardrails. Guardrails is very important because now we are letting LLMs do whatever they want with all the tools that we have given them. But in many cases, like we cannot trust LLMs to be always correct. So you have to be careful about what things you're allowing the LLMs to do and what you're not allowing LLMs to do. So for example, let's say I have a tool in the company that deletes the record of one of the users. And maybe it is useful in some scenarios, but probably I will never let LLM do it by themselves. And I will always try to impose things like always ask for manual approval before calling this tool. So these kind of guardrails you will start needing inside the company to avoid LLMs to call these destructive tools within the company. So in that case, like in many cases, you will need manual approval. In some cases, you will need to remove PII before sending data to one of the MCP servers or things like that. So the concept of guardrails becomes more important. Then comes observability. Because LLMs are non-deterministic, like they can call tools in any order, and we don't know exactly what will happen, it becomes very, very important to monitor them, to understand, like if I gave access to 5 MCP servers, what did the LLM exactly do? Like did it call calendar first, and then it called Slack, and then it called GitHub, and in what order, what time each of those guys took, and how did the flow went through? So this, you need metrics, you need tracing, all of that observability piece needs to line up. And then you need rate limiting and caching. Like when you start using MCPs at scale, you will basically run into issues like one MCP server, suddenly one LLM like started making a lot of requests to one of the MCP servers, and that MCP server went down. So things like rate limiting will be needed. Caching also becomes very important in certain cases. So for example, if you're using a web search tool, and web search tool, you pay on the cost of every time you call a web search tool. Like if you're searching something on the internet, you have to pay for every single call. Now if I've already searched for something now, that result is probably not going to change in the next 1 hour. So in that case, you might want to just cache the results of that tool and not call the tool again. This is a thing that you have to probably configure on a per tool basis, because some tools might be very cheap, you might not want to cache, while some tools you might want to cache. So this is another thing that you will, these problems will happen more like when you have started using it on a more bit of a larger scale. But the other problems you probably need on day zero. So this is more like a day one problem. So any questions before this till point, like that I should answer, Anurag?
Yeah, there is one question, Abhishek, which I think comes across quite frequently. Can we be sure that the data that MCP servers are reading to is not exfiltrated to the models themselves? Like if multiple MCP tools are invoked, like the data is getting exposed to the models, right? So can we be sure that that models are not using it, let's say, for training or whatever?
Yes, that you can be sure. Like sure as in like sure by the contracts that exist. So for example, like if you're using OpenAI model, OpenAI has a contract. They mention it in the contract that they will not use the data for training. In certain cases, they say that they might use. In certain cases, they say they don't. Especially with their enterprise contracts, they have this clear clause that they will not use it for training. So when you're using these commercial models, you are trusting the commercial provider that they are not going to use it for training. If you're hosting the models on premise, like if you're hosting Llama on your GPUs and all, there is no way the data is going to be used by the model and it infiltrates the model. It's not going to infiltrate the model ever unless you retrain the model. So cool. So I'll move ahead. So given that I introduced the challenges of what it takes to actually democratize MCP inside your enterprise and things like that. This is something that we have been working on to make it a possibility in today's world. And this is something we also use internally as a company for our own employees also. And this is something that we wanted to kind of launch so that every company can reap the benefits of it. So the concept is very similar, very simple. Basically, you have an AI gateway, and behind that, you have all the models. So we internally do like I have accounts of Azure, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google Gemini, AWS Bedrock. So pretty much developers have access to all the models, and they can play around with different models to see which one is doing better. And at least from our experience, like not one model is good at everything. Like if you are dealing with code kind of things and all, Anthropic does a much better job, like Claude, Sonnet. And if you're dealing with more like blog writing kind of things, like Gemini does a much better job. So different models excel at different things. So you probably will need an array of models to build the use case at the highest accuracy level that you want. And then we have some tools that we have connected inside the company, like the tools that we use, like Slack, GitHub, Jira, Gmail. And each of these tools has these APIs. A few of these APIs that I've listed here, and I'll show it in the demo that I go later. And then we have some common tools like web search, document processing, like doing OCR on documents and things like that exposed behind this gateway. So, and we have full access control. So you can actually give developers access to all these tools, all these models, so they can start building those agents really, really easily. So this is the concept behind the AI gateway that we really wanted to materialize and bring it to reality. I'll go into further details of that part. So this is more like going inside the gateway, what it does. I won't spend a lot of time on this technical details, but just give you a very high level overview. Some of this is there in our docs, and probably the demo will make it a bit more clear. So the flow is basically user sends a prompt to the gateway. The gateway knows. So if I send a prompt to the gateway, like show me a list of all the messages in my Slack in the last 7 days. So in that case, the prompt first hits the gateway. The gateway is going to check that if I am authenticated to Slack or not. If I am, it's going to get my OAuth 2 token first. It gets the token. It goes to Slack. In Slack, it will list down all the tools of Slack. So Slack will have get messages, get channels, things like that. It's going to list all the tools, and then it's going to go to the LLMs that, hey, I have my Slack. These are the tools of Slack. This is the token of Slack. Can you give me which tool should I call back? So the LLM is going to respond to with that you are going to call back, get messages for Abhishek in the last 7 days. And then it's going to go and execute the tool. So this arrow that you see, it's going to go and execute the tool, get messages, going to get the responses back. And then it's going to go tell LLM again that these are the responses that I've got back. What do you want to do? The LLM will tell that, okay, we have got the responses. Let's send back the responses to the user. And then you send back the responses to the user. So I actually got back all the messages in my Slack in the last 7 days. This is a very simple example that I gave, and this will kind of become a bit more clear in the demo that I show. So the features that we have launched, at least in our AI gateway as of now, is you can deploy MCP servers. So I'll show in the demo, and these are parts that I'll be showing in the demo. How you can deploy the MCP servers very easily, how you can create an endpoint out of them. Then we'll also walk over the centralized MCP registry, how you can actually add all the MCP servers in one place. We'll go over how do you do access control over the MCP servers, the agent playground, how you can actually create agents by just adding the MCP tools. And then you can also use the MCP servers in your code, or you can even use the tools directly in your code if you don't want to involve LLMs. So we'll go over those parts, and I'll also show you a few demos today. Hopefully they work. One of the demos is I have my calendar, and I usually have interviews every single day, and I just want to fetch that. Show me the candidate data that I'm interviewing tomorrow. Something along those lines. I just want to type it out and get the data back to me. And for this, if you think what the LLM needs to do is it actually needs to go and check my calendar, filter out which are the interviews from that. From that interview, it needs to find out the resume of the candidate. It needs to go to the PDF of the resume of the candidate, do a OCR on the PDF, get back the candidate details, and then return me the details. So it has to do all those things to get me back all the data. So we'll go into that demo also. So I'll now move to the demo part. Any questions before that? Happy to answer.
Yeah, let's take a couple of questions, Abhishek. So one question is, the big challenge for most enterprise today is zero trust implementation for MCP. How does TrueFoundry solve for it?
So I need to understand, like, what does the exact zero trust thing mean? Like, you mean you don't want to trust the MCP servers, like the MCP? So yeah, because there is no state being stored anywhere. So it'll be good to, like, maybe we can have a deeper discussion on that part, like which is the part that you're actually worried about.
Okay, we'll send out a follow-up on that
Yeah.
one. Then the next question that we can take is, what are some common risks using MCP that you are concerned about?
So risks, as in, like, you just need to worry about the accuracy of the model and the sensitivity of the tools. Like, again, as I mentioned earlier, that try not to have tools that are very destructive. And if you have them, like, make sure you are guarding them by human approval or things like that. Like, initially, if you start with MCP servers, it's better to give access to read tools, like things that can read the data, and have every MCP as much as possible with OAuth authentication. So I'll go into the authentication mechanisms for MCP, but try not to have MCP servers with token-based authentication or no authentication unless you know what you're doing. So there are a few best practices while using MCP. So I'll cover that, a few of the things during the demo.
Yeah. And similar thing, like, there is a question around access management that theoretically makes sense that you need to do access management, but how do we do it practically? So when you're going through the demo, maybe like just highlight a bit more on that one.
Yes. So I'll do that. Yes. So
Okay, let's move on.
yeah. So this is a repository that we have. This is a sample repository where we have a few MCP servers. You can internally in your enterprise maintain a similar repository where, like, I would recommend not just downloading the MCP servers from the internet and launching them, because they might not be safe, and you at least want to see the code. The code is usually not very big in the MCP server, so you can probably check those parts. And we actually do the same. Like, in our internal company, these are the MCP servers that we use so far, and this list will grow over time depending on how many tools we use. And if you see here, like, we have Atlassian, GitHub, Slack, Google Calendar. I'm just going to show you a simple example of a calculator MCP in case you want to build your own MCP, how it looks like. So if you want to build your own MCP, which has like a few tools, it's actually very simple to build. So this is a Python file, and you just do MCP equal to fast MCP. And then each function, you just put this decorator MCP at the rate MCP.tool. So if it's clear, like, so this is an add function that I've given: add, subtract, multiply, divide, square. So these are the different MCP tools you can call that I've put in this MCP server. If you want to see the MCP server of any other, like a GitHub one, like, you can go ahead and basically see all the MCP APIs inside GitHub. You can see Google Calendar, all of those things you can start seeing. So if you see like Google Calendar is list events, list calendar, create event, update event, these kind of are the tools inside the Google Calendar MCP server. So I will go ahead and let's say I've built this own MCP server, this simple calculator, and I want to deploy this MCP server. So I'll show you the process in TrueFoundry how to deploy it. You can also deploy it in whatever process that you have internally to your own company. The process is going to be roughly the same. So I'll just yeah. So I will just go ahead, click on new deployment. This is an MCP server, so it's like a service. So I'm going to deploy it like a service. I'll click on next. And what I will do is I will copy the link of this GitHub repository because this is where my service is living. So I will call it a calculator MCP. And I will enter this Git repository URL. It has picked up the main branch. This is what I want to deploy. I don't have a Docker file in this repository. So I'm just going to choose this Python code option. And this is the directory in which my simple calculator MCP is living. So I'm just going to give this. I have a requirements.txt in this repository, so I'm going to give that. And the command that I need is python main.py. So just to show you this thing, I have a main.py and I can just run python main.py. So this is the command. Port is 8000. And then if I click submit, so this will basically download the Git repository, build the Docker image, create a container, and then deploy it on Kubernetes. This will take a couple of minutes. So it has already built the Docker image. It will soon deploy the MCP server. So yeah, so the pod is coming up and the MCP server is deployed. You can go to this endpoint. So this is the MCP server endpoint. If you guys have worked with MCP servers, like you can actually inspect the MCP servers in the, there is something called MCP inspector where you can enter the endpoint and you can actually see all the tools. So if you see, these are the tools that I added: add, subtract, multiply, divide, square. So these are the tools inside the MCP server that you can actually inspect from MCP inspector. This is an open source tool that you can find and download. So this is more on how did I host an MCP server. So yeah, so this is my calculator MCP that is hosted. Similarly, I had hosted GitHub, Slack. All these MCP servers are also hosted internally. So now I'll go to like the AI gateway part. So let me just go here.
As you are transitioning, Abhishek, there's one question related to hosting. In our industry, many customers have very strict firewall policy or even totally disconnected from the internet. Does TrueFoundry provide support for deploying the MCP servers and the platform on a local Kubernetes server instead of cloud?
Yes, we do. So the Kubernetes cluster that you can deploy on can be on-prem, air-gapped, all of that. And we have customers already deploying TrueFoundry in air-gapped environments on their on-premise Kubernetes clusters. So that is possibility. And one of the things I think that question came up. So this endpoint that I hosted here, this is a public endpoint, but you can actually put this endpoint behind a firewall that no developer can access this directly. And this is where the kind of gateway will come, that you don't allow developers to access MCP URLs directly. Always go via the gateway that enforces all those access controls and everything. So this can be behind a firewall and only whitelist this for the gateway to be accessed, for it to be accessible by the gateway. So just to give a brief overview of the gateway because this is for folks that don't know, like our gateway is a product where you can add models from different sources. So you can add like Bedrock, Vertex, OpenAI, all the models from different sources. You can decide which developers have access to model and things like that. So when you add a Bedrock account, you can decide which developers, which teams, which applications can access the model. So you can do that. We also show you a playground where you can actually play around with these models. So you can give it a prompt and you can get back the response. You can call the models from a unified API. And then as the developers are calling the models, you can actually track all the metrics of the models. How much is the token latency, time to first token, request per second, all of that you can track by models, users, teams, and everything. And you can also trace all the requests that are going through the gateway to see exactly what was the request and response made. So this is more on the models part of the gateway, where you are able to play around with different models with a unified API. You don't have to change your code while changing the model. So this is one of the things that the model already existed, and this is already being used. We added this MCP servers part to this gateway now. So let me just show you the MCP servers thing. So the way to add MCP server is, we have a concept of MCP server group. So group is more like, you might want to have in your company like a dev MCP server group and a production MCP server group. Inside the dev MCP server, you might want to give like developers can access these MCP servers, developers can manage these MCP servers, they can add, delete MCP servers. But in the production, you only want the admins to access those MCP servers. So this is why we have this concept of groups. And you can create groups on development, staging, prod, or you can create groups by teams and things like that. So that is the concept of a group. Inside a group, you can add as many MCP servers as you want. So the MCP server that I just created and deployed now, I'll just show you that part. So this was the MCP server that I created. And this is the endpoint. So I'll just copy this endpoint. I'll go to the gateway, MCP servers. And I already have a calculator MCP, but I'll just add one more. It doesn't matter. So calculator test MCP. And I enter the URL of the MCP server. In this case, I don't have any authentication on the MCP server in this thing. But if you're doing Slack and all, you should probably do an OAuth 2 based authentication. So yeah, in this case, I don't have, but you can do that thing. So this is a calculator MCP server. So if you see, like, this is the MCP server that I just added and it got added and things like that. So this is here now. And then what you can do is, this is the model I've selected, GPT-4o. I can actually select the tools that I just added. So these are the tools that are existing in all the different MCP servers. So this is the Kubernetes MCP server. So you can find things like pods, services, all of that. Calculator is the 5 tools that we added: add, subtract, multiply, divide, square. GitHub will have its own MCP tools. So if you see like add, review, comment, create branch, create or update file, all these MCP servers are there. Hugging Face MCP server is also there. So you can figure out all these things. And the calculator one is the one that we just added again. So this is how you kind of add MCP servers to a global registry. And now I will go into the part of how you use these MCP servers. So any questions till this point, like happy to answer.
Yeah, let's take a couple of questions. So, how does caching help reduce cold start or inference latency in MCP for LLMs?
How does caching help in reduce?
Cold start or inference latency in MCP for LLMs.
Caching can help because you are not going to the model again, but you need to be very careful about when you cache and when you don't cache. Like if your query is give me the stock price of Google now, you probably never want to cache that. But if your query is how many countries are there in the world, then you probably don't want to go to the LLM again. So if you can cache that prompt, like if I had already asked this question, how many countries are there in the world, and it replied with 206, and then I basically I cache that response. So the next time somebody asks me that question, I'm not going to go to the LLM. So that can help you reduce the response time, but you have to be very careful. It needs to be decided on an application basis, which one is the correct one and which one is not.
Are there any companies and industries interested in MCP authentication that goes beyond OAuth and OIDC, or is that just overkill?
So far, OAuth and OIDC are doing the job, and probably it will continue because those are the accepted authentication systems throughout. Like everything in the world is probably working with, a lot of the systems in the world are working with OAuth today. So I don't expect it to evolve to something else, but anything can happen here. But I think OAuth 2 and OIDC are going to stay.
Let's say I need to use a public MCP tool like Postgres, but to use that, I would need to send my creds to create the connection. If that's what happens, how can we be sure that this is happening in a secure way?
Yeah, so Postgres, I would not recommend you to use a external MCP server. At least, especially for data access and all, you don't know unless you trust the external provider. Because the moment you send the creds, they have access to your data technically. So, at that point, like you can also self-host the Postgres MCP server next to your Postgres, and then you know that you are in full control of it. So that is also an option.
What are some common risks using MCP that you are concerned about?
I wouldn't say much risk, as I mentioned, like just you need to be careful of not using destructive tools, or always be wary of the fact that LLMs can go wrong. Like we should not assume that everything that you build, it needs to come with the guardrail that LLM can go wrong, and how do you prevent things from going wrong. So that is the major risk, but that's like the risk of working with LLMs in the first place. So it's just about you have to build a lot of evaluations, a lot of testing to make sure that you are getting the answer correctly on a repeat by repeat basis.
And last question, does this support for dynamic client registration and managing different identities?
Yes, we already support dynamic client registration. So that is already in there.
Okay, let's
So
move on.
I'll go to, because we don't have a lot of time left. I just want to cover a few demo. So for example, let me ask, what is the stock price of Google today? Stock price of Google today. So in this case, if you see, if I ask this to GPT-4o, so it's telling me I'm unable to provide the real-time data because it doesn't know, it hasn't been trained on like data right now, right? So it cannot answer this question. But let me give it one MCP server. So web search is one of the tools that I gave it access to. So it can now go and search the web and then give me the answer. So let me just repeat this same question again with this web search added, and let's see what it does. So it said that this is a question for which I need to search the internet. So it went to Google with the query, Google stock price today. And then Google responded with this answer. And based on that, it was able to tell me that this is the stock price of Google today. So this is one example where LLM is able to do now with one of the tools that it was not able to do earlier. I'm going to go to a little bit more complicated example. So I will just, these are some prompts that I've previously saved, so that I don't have to type here in the demo. So I'm going to show you a debugger agent that we kind of built, and it's as simple as a prompt. It's not really that I had to write code or anything like that. So the thing is that what I'm doing here is I have an application here. So I'll just show you this thing. I had deployed an application that is throwing an error, and I want to understand what is the error and how do I fix it. So if you see this application, this is an application that I deployed. And if I see the logs of this application, I can see these error lines appearing once in a while. And I want to understand why is this error line appearing and what is the fix for it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to copy the link of this application, and I'm going to tell it, I am facing errors in this application. Can you fix it? And I'm going to add the MCP servers. So these are all the Kubernetes MCP servers that I added. And I wanted to add the GitHub MCP servers. So these are a lot of MCP servers that I've added, and probably I don't need all of them. So I can actually remove some of them. So let me just remove. So I'll just leave it like that, and let's see what it does. This can take a bit of time because the model takes a bit of time to respond, but let's see. And while I'm showing this thing, while the model is doing what it's doing, I just wanted to highlight here that these are the different these are different APIs that I've given it access to. So it basically, what it did was, I have given it a link of an application. So it's going and try to get that application, that what is this application about. So it went and got that application. It actually listed all the machines or pods that are running that application. it went ahead and got the logs of that application automatically. So that's why it called the get logs. And this is my MCP server name. On the left side is the tool name. Then it went ahead and searched my code in the GitHub. So this is the repository. It automatically figured out that this is the repository in which my code is sitting. And then it's trying to read the files from my Git repository, that where is this code mistake happening. So it actually read that there seems to be an exception triggered in the application related to the function this, because it has read my code from GitHub, and it has already suggested me a fix, that what you can do to fix this thing. And now it's asking me, would you like to proceed with creating a branch and implementing this fix? So I'm saying, like, please go ahead and create a PR. So it is now creating a branch in GitHub in this Git repository. It is updating the file, and will soon post the PR link also. So it has said that I've created a pull request here, and if I open this pull request link, this is the improve error handling for unsupported artifact types, and this is the PR it raised. And because I was talking to it, this is actually my username. So it automatically took my authentication token and not like somebody else's, because the AI gateway that we have, the GitHub authentication is working via OAuth 2. So if another employee in my company was asking this question, it would have done things on their behalf. So that authentication is actually very strongly tied. So in this case, like, I could actually just give it link to one of my applications. It could find out the bug and it could automatically go and fix it. One more demo that I would like to show you is, for example, I have a lot of interviews on my calendar. And I think I earlier talked about this thing. And I want to figure out the resume of the candidate who has the interview tomorrow. So I'm going to select this. And this is the prompt that I had loaded earlier. So what system design with TrueFoundry call do I have tomorrow? What is the candidate's last experience? And redact the PI name and data. So I'm saying that don't mention the candidate name because I don't want to show it here. And this is going to talk to my actual calendar, by the way. So I'm not going to show a lot of data like right here, but I'll just show you a few things here. So I'm going to give it access to my Google Calendar. And if you see like Google Calendar, it's asking me to connect because I haven't given it access yet. So let me just connect the Google Calendar. So I'm going to give it access to my Google Calendar. It's going to authenticate. And now it's successful. And if you see now it's showing us connected, and these are the APIs that I have in my Google Calendar. So I've given it access to all my Google Calendar ones. And then one more thing I need is, because the candidate's resume will be a PDF and you might need OCR, so I want to give it an OCR functionality here. So I've given this thing, and let's try to run this thing. Let's see what it does. So first of all, I had mentioned what system design with TrueFoundry call do I have tomorrow. So the concept of tomorrow, LLMs don't know. So it's going to do first that it's going to get the current time. And based on that, it's going to calculate that what is tomorrow. So then it said that I'll search for the system design with TrueFoundry call for tomorrow, which is July 4, 24. So this is the thing, like a few demos that I showed you. All of this data that I'm showing you here, everything is fully traced. So you can go and look at all the observability and everything, what exactly happened, what went wrong. All of the data is actually saved for you to debug and everything. So any questions?
Hello, hi guys. Any questions? We'd love to take some questions, and we have a few exciting announcements as well.
And sorry, I think I just forgot to show one thing, Dipti.
Go ahead, Abhishek.
This was the trace that I was talking about. So when I called it, it'll show you exactly what MCP server it's calling, what is the tool it's calling, So it called the Google Calendar tool. It took 23.51 milliseconds. So you can actually see the entire trace of what exactly the LLM did. And this is stored in your cloud account. So this data is not going out. So yeah, you can later see exactly what happened and how much time each of these guys took. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Amazing session, Abhishek. Like I've seen these videos before, but every time I see these demos, it blows my mind away. Right. I'll just take a minute to do a couple of announcements. Let me know if you guys can see my screen.
We can, Deepti.
Okay, so first thing first, whatever you've seen, we're putting everything in our beta launch today. So you'll be able to register, manage your MCP servers, do access control, authorization, track what your agents are doing, deploy your MCP servers, everything, the entire MCP lifecycle management you'll be able to do on the platform. So you just need to sign up on truefoundry.com/register. It'll create an account for you and you can get started. So yeah, go ahead, create your accounts, reach out to us if you face any blockers, and would love to hear your feedback. So this is a beta launch and we'll work with you to improve the product, to make it more mature. You've seen the power of the demo, but yeah, go ahead, try it. We'll be closely listening, right? Second is, the second announcement, I know there are a lot of enterprises also here, a lot of bigger companies who want a personalized session, tailored session for their entire team. So a lot of the enterprises that we work with have benefited from these sessions. So we're opening this up for all the bigger companies, bigger enterprises. So if Anurag or someone has the link, they can put it in the chat, or actually I can also do it. So just sign up here. It's a small form, or you can scan the QR. Once you sign up, we'll give you a 3-month free access of the MCP Gateway. The entire, and along with the MCP Gateway, you'll get access to the entire platform. We have multiple hosting options. We'll do the entire onboarding, setup, do a personalized advisory session for you, look into your GenAI stack. So yeah, so we have our in-house experts, which over time have got a lot of experience with how like bigger enterprises are building their GenAI stack, what challenges they are running into, right? So yeah, go ahead, fill this form, and we'll reach out to you. Let us know if you have any questions on both these announcements. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box.
Please use the form link in the chat box, and if before dropping off, you all can fill the form link, that will be great. We'll look forward to kind of getting back on any action items from there as well. And thank you everyone for attending this. Like, we can stick around for a few questions if there are. Please again put it on the Q&A chat box, and we can take some of this, Deepti, as people are kind of filling the forms.
Yes, for sure. Are there any open questions? I think Nitin, you have your hand raised. So if you can just post your question in the chat, that'll be great.
One question from Durga is AI Gateway as an offering available for deployment in customers' cloud? So yes, Durga, like a lot of our customers are already using it on their cloud within their VPC, and it's fully supported without any data flowing out. So let us know and we'll be happy to kind of support you. It's also mentioned in our docs.
Abhishek, there's a question by Nitin. Like ChatGPT has a chat window token size. Similarly, does MCP maintain that token size for a chat window? If we may take a AI chat agent using MCP.
So the fundamental limitation of chat window token size remains for MCP also. That is the fundamental limitation of the model. So that still remains, but you can do fancy things, Nitin, like and ChatGPT does some of it, like automatically summarizing the previous context to bring it lower than the context length and things like that. So there are advanced techniques that you can start doing there. You can compress the information, summarize it, or remove unwanted parts and things like that. So it will become smarter, but that you just have to work around the limitation for now. Or you can use even models with larger context length. Like there are models that have 1 million context length or 100K context length. So that can also solve the problem in some cases.
Great. Folks, again, before dropping off, requesting to do share your comments, feedback on the form. We can kind of do a private session for you if needed for the entire team. And it has been really beneficial for our companies and looking forward to that.
All right, I think we are already a few minutes out, but yeah, don't forget to fill the form before dropping off, guys. And we're here to take any questions if you have any more questions.
There are a lot of questions around guardrails and others. So Abhishek, maybe you can touch on how that is kind of implemented and whether it's a part of the gateway and the MCP gateway.
Yes, the guardrails are a part of it. Like you can, in the MCP tools, guardrails is something that we are working on, like marking certain tools as sensitive or requiring permission and things like that. So that is work under progress. But for models, PII detection, hate speech, toxicity, competition, name remover, all those things are already present in the gateway as of today. And we can send the docs link also for that.
There's a question from Sandeep again on what are the options for the installation of MCP server like private data center, Azure, AWS. So Sandeep, you can install the system on any environment, including your private data center, as well as any cloud environment, and everything can be within your VPC. So we covered that, and we can follow up if you let us know. We can send the docs for that as well. Okay, folks, thanks a lot. I think, thanks everyone for attending. It was a great session, great attendance. We'll be following up with the recording, with the presentation. And if any one of you are interested in live demos or a live session, please let us know. Thank you again for attending. We'll be closing the webinar now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.